This terrifying immortal king stares down his rival with a chilling grin, while the warrior of light screams, "With the power of light we shall not fall," resulting in a clash so explosive it looks like a final boss battle. But our boy Seong-hyun just takes a sip of his soda and scoffs. This fight feels a little too theatrical, knowing the whole thing is a total sham. Plot twist: the legendary king, the hero, and this lazy bum are actually all him. Just then, a doorbell chime breaks the silence of his dark, messy apartment, where an agent from the Awakeners Management Bureau is looking for him. Seong-hyun looks absolutely drained as he confirms his name with a hollow stare, prompting the official to leave a standard warning about reporting new powers. So he shuts the door, realizing that was his first human interaction in 6 months, and he is already planning to go another half year without seeing a single soul. "I am a social recluse," he mutters while staring at a bowl of expired ramen, knowing the world sees him as a pathetic loser with zero willpower. However, he knows the truth. He's just a victim of a twisted reality when breaking news hits, reporting on an arsonist awakener who committed a crime before vanishing into another dimension. As he stares at the screen, his eyes reflecting the chaos of these awakeners, who are regular people that suddenly manifest godlike supernatural powers, only to be snatched away from Earth to fight for their lives in another world. Though only a tiny fraction of these warriors ever actually return to tell the tale, driven by pure despair and frustration. Many awakeners turn to crime, costing Seong-hyun everything, leaving him to rot while training a broken body, until he finally breaks, muttering it is all a waste. "I am pathetic," he whispers as trauma crushes his spirit, wondering why he's too paralyzed to even step outside. He just wants to go anywhere else, when suddenly a blue screen announces the Akasha system. Before he can react, the system awakens his skill, forcing him to scream. Wait, this is how it happens. This air hums as his new power avatar awakens, but the hype dies when a 24-hour timer appears. Seong-hyun's heart drops while shouting that this has to be a joke, as a warning states he will be forcibly escorted if he fails, sparking pure panic as his safety is ripped away. Knowing it takes a year to return to Earth, "I will have to survive for a decade," he realizes, terrified. With 3 minutes left, his injured leg begins trembling. Our boy stands tall, gasping while preparing for hell as he takes that final step and whispers, "No," because the thought of leaving his house is pure torture. He screams that a talentless shut-in cannot survive another dimension, but he stops mid-panic as a realization hits him. Like a lightning bolt when he remembers his avatar skill, shouting, "Let us see what this can do," as he activates it. A glowing blue copy of himself manifests out of thin air, making him flinch back in shock while yelling, "Wait, it is me." Suddenly, a sharp pain stabs through his skull, as his vision splits, showing him 2 different perspectives at once, leaving him standing back to back with his own supernatural twin. "My vision is shared," he gasps, seeing the room from both sides. But the mental strain of controlling 2 bodies is making him dizzy. With only 60 seconds left on the clock before the forced transfer, he slumps against his double, calling himself and his power worthless, until a desperate, crazy thought crosses his mind. What if he does not have to be the one to go? He watches as his avatar takes a bold step into the portal, holding his breath while the system recognizes the transfer, and as the blue light consumes the copy of his body. Seong-hyun collapses in his messy room, whispering, "It actually worked." Seong-hyun's jaw drops as the portal actually accepts his double as the real deal, confirming the transfer to the Autorica dimension is a total success. But as his copy stands in the middle of a lush alien forest, he starts panicking because he can feel everything his twin is experiencing, screaming, "Why am I here? I sent my avatar," while his brain starts to melt. This system coldly informs him that the only way back to Earth is through the Karma shop, which means he'll have to survive hellish adventures just to earn his ticket home. And with 0 karma to his name, the mental feedback hits him like a freight train. His vision splits in 2, showing his messy room and the deadly forest at the same time, forcing him to shout, "Dismiss avatar," before his head literally explodes from the strain. He collapses back onto his floor, gasping for air as the connection finally snaps. But the motion sickness is so violent that he can barely keep his lunch down, stumbling into the bathroom to lose his mind and his breakfast simultaneously. Once the room stops spinning, he realizes he actually cheated the system and summons the copy again, staring at his supernatural twin while asking, "Is this some kind of joke?" He's convinced this power is completely useless for a shut-in like him. Until a massive notification pops up congratulating him for returning to Earth without any help, granting him a legendary interdimensional portal perk that breaks the entire game. As his karma starts skyrocketing from this impossible feat, he realizes he just became the first awakener to conquer another world in record time. Seong-hyun's eyes nearly pop out of his head as he stares at the screen, realizing he just banked nearly 2 million karma points for doing absolutely nothing. Which is insane because these points are usually earned through years of bloodshed and influence, serving as the only currency to upgrade your god-tier skills or buy a ticket back to Earth. He starts sweating, wondering if this is a massive system glitch that'll come back to haunt him, but then he just shrugs it off with a grin, thinking, "It's not like I cheated on purpose." Since he's already home, the return option is grayed out, leaving him with a mountain of wealth. and a burning curiosity about what the status enhancement tab can actually do for him. He scrolls through the list until his finger stops on a 10,000-point regeneration upgrade, hesitating for just a second before the desperation to fix his broken life takes over. With a single tap, the system lets out a sharp chime that echoes through the room, sending a surge of supernatural energy straight into his mangled, useless legs. His breath hitches as he whispers, "I can actually feel my leg," watching in total awe as the deep, jagged scars from his past begin to vanish into thin air. This was the injury that destroyed his future and ripped his family away from him. This same wound that forced him to rot in this dark apartment for months on end. Suddenly, a notification screams that his healing has officially broken past the human limit, granting him the legendary skill Extreme Regeneration and making him practically immortal. He hits the gym equipment like a beast, shouting, "I've become unbelievably strong." Smirking at the screen, he realizes he still has a fortune left to spend, so what's next? Eyes glued to the system screen, he wonders what happens if he drops 300,000 points on an innate skill upgrade, slamming the button without a second thought. As the blue light fades, Seong-hyun realizes he just gambled his fortune on his avatar ability, smirking as he wonders just how broken this power is about to become. Staring at his double, he compliments its physique while the copy asks if he works out, realizing his mind has literally split in two, allowing him to control both bodies with perfect precision. But the real game changer is the secondary skill he just unlocked. A passive called Mind Hub that filters out unwanted sensations and emotional trauma. He tests it by decking his avatar in the face, laughing because he does not feel a single ounce of pain, which means the biggest drawback of his power has been completely deleted. "I can explore deadly dimensions from my cozy room," he cackles, looking like a total villain, because he is basically playing a high-stakes RPG with a body that does not matter if it dies. Suddenly, a third copy manifests out of thin air, leaving him with two supernatural twins to command. Our boy starts sweating at the thought of managing a whole army, deciding it is time to give them actual names, while the three of them huddle up to brainstorm, but the MC is clearly struggling with his lack of creativity, until his eyes land on a coffee cup and a packet of ketchup sitting on his messy table. Pointing at the first one, he declares, "Your name will be Hans," as the system grants it a magic affinity, before turning to the second and dubbing him Heinz, who gains a massive physical defense buff. Even though he thinks their new skills sound totally lame, his chibi doubles start flexing like absolute units. As Seong-hyun narrows his eyes and whispers, "It is finally time for the main quest." Seong-hyun takes a deep breath and mutters, "Let us go." Finally leaving his room with a year's worth of trash, crossing the threshold of his apartment for the first time in months. He braces for the usual wave of crippling social anxiety to hit him, but as the sunlight hits his face, he realizes he feels absolutely no anxiety, smirking because his Mind Hub skill is clearly doing its job. While the real Seong-hyun handles chores, his vision flicks to Hans in the other dimension, who just touched down in an alien forest where it is already night. Hans notes how tranquil the woods are, thinking no monsters are lurking nearby, only for a panther to jump out making him yell, "Really, I literally just said that." This beast lunges, but our boy does not flinch as he draws his blade, catching the monster's fangs on his steel in a display of perfect reflexes. Even as the panther tries to crush his weapon with its jaws, Hans just looks disgusted by the drool, muttering, That is actually gross." He takes a direct hit but does not feel any fear or pain, shouting infuse mana, as he treats this like a total video game. With one clean strike, the monster hits the dirt, leaving Hans standing over the body, though he sighs, "I am still weak," knowing more monsters might show up soon. He scans the horizon for a safe spot to hide his second body, until his eyes widen at a hidden village, gasping, "It is a village." Hans is greeted by a friendly old man named Malcolm, the village chief, who's genuinely shocked that a lone traveler survived that monster-infested forest. Our boy plays it cool, scratching his head while asking if he can crash there for the night, and the old man happily agrees, making him sigh with total relief. Malcolm notes his weird outfit, but Hans just lies through his teeth about being a collector, before getting invited to the local bar for a round of drinks. After a long day of playing hero, he finally flops onto a soft bed. Realizing it's been ages since he actually socialized with another human being, he lets out a massive yawn, thinking about how much fun he's having, completely unaware of the dark shadow looming over his sleeping body. While back in his apartment, the actual Seong-hyun is living the absolute dream, crushing fried chicken and cold beer with his avatar doing all the heavy lifting. Seong-hyun admits he feels a tiny bit guilty about his second twin, Heinz, because he's currently sweating buckets in a gym just to level up his physical defense. "My clones are working hard, so I should probably do some research," he mutters, cracking his knuckles as he prepares to become the world's ultimate armchair commander, until a strange liquid starts dripping from a cup in the other world, sending a sudden, chilling shiver straight down Seong-hyun's spine, as a blood-red notification screams that his avatar has been killed and reset, leaving him frozen in total horror when he gasps, Wait, Hans is actually dead. Seonghyun stares at the Death of Avatar screen in total disbelief, realizing that friendly old man must have spiked his drink with something lethal. He winces from the mental backlash, cursing his own stupidity for being so careless. But then his eyes widen as a familiar spark of energy surges back into his mind. Back in the village, the chief sneers at a lifeless body, muttering, "I had high hopes, but he is worthless," while his accomplice agrees that surviving the forest alone should have meant he was special. They look down in disgust at what is left of Hans, calling him nothing but a measly elite skeleton, unaware that the corpse is currently staring at its own bony hands in total shock. A system chime confirms the worst. His race has officially been swapped to undead. Luckily, his shared perks mean Hans is now a skeleton with the power of extreme regeneration. "I am an undead," he whispers, his jaw literally clicking as he speaks, though the system notes that his mind hub is the only thing keeping his sanity from rotting away. Scanning the dark room, he wonders where the hell they have taken his new bony body, only to jump back when he sees a horde of zombies and skeletons standing perfectly still. This horrifying truth finally sinks in. This entire village has been turned into a factory for the undead. Suddenly, the door creaks open and a man walks in, making Hans freeze like a statue, recognizing him instantly as one of the friendly locals from the bar the night before. This guy grumbles about being stuck in this backwater dump, confirming Hans's theory about a cult of dark mages, until he stops dead in his tracks, locking eyes with our boy's empty sockets. Hans starts sweating, if skeletons can even sweat, wondering, did he just notice I can move? This guard points and barks, "What is this one doing over here? Move over there," nearly giving our boy a heart attack as he barely manages to keep his cover. He feels a strange force tugging at his bones, while the guard grumbles about the village chief's annoying obsession with checking the storage. As the door slams shut, Hans realizes that pulling sensation felt eerily familiar, recognizing it as the exact same energy he uses to pilot his own avatars. A light bulb goes off in his skull. His magic affinity is not just for show. It might actually let him hijack the other undead in this room. Fast forward 1 week later, and our boy has been busy grinding in the shadows, hiding out in the storage room to test the limits of his new necromancy. Exhaling a deep, ghostly breath, he focuses every ounce of mana he has, his empty sockets igniting with a terrifying blue flame. With a sharp rattle, a nearby skeleton jerks to life under his command, though it mostly just flails around like a glitchy NPC in a broken game. "I can only handle one at a time," he sighs, realizing his elite skeleton rank has its limits, until a sudden squeak breaks his concentration and sends him into a panic. Looking down, he finds a tiny rat treating his foot like a personal chew toy, snatching the rodent out of the air before it can take another bite of his tibia. "I finally got you, you little pest," he yells, shaking the rat for gnawing on him all week. Genuinely impressed that something so small could be that fast, Hans eyes the rodent, thinking, "Wait, if it is this quick and small." He decides to test his new powers, muttering, "Let us give this a try." With a firm squeeze, mana surges through its tiny body, watching as the dark energy begins to rewrite the creature's very soul. A flash of red light ignites the rat's eyes with a sinister glow, making our boy cheer, "I did it," as his first minion is born. Pointing toward the door, he commands, "Go, Alfred, Operation Spy Rat commence." Alfred turns on a dime, ready to infiltrate the enemy's secrets, immediately tailing a guard who's busy grumbling about his annoying boss. As the guard unlocks a door, Hans wonders if more undead are inside, slipping Alfred through the gap to follow the man into the darkness. Suddenly, a wave of dread hits Hans, gasping, "What is this place?" Making him realize the truth as he panics. This place is dangerous. Outside, the guards gossip about a fermentation process that is almost complete, mentioning a terrifying artifact called the Fragment of the Immortal King draining life. They laugh about their magical fields, asking, "Who'd even sneak in here?" While Hans smirks through his rat, thinking, "Sweet, thanks for the free info." He starts sniffing for the village chief, wondering, where's the boss hiding? Until a sudden, brutal strike plunges straight through Alfred's tiny body, leaving Hans reeling as his eyes on the ground are violently snuffed out. This village chief stands over the remains of our tiny spy, casually dismissing it as just a common pest. While Hans holds his breath, terrified, the old man sensed his magic, but the chief assumes the rat was naturally corrupted by rot. He realizes the source of this dark energy must be the storage room. Immediately demanding to know which guard was slacking on their shift, looking at Alfred's lifeless body, Hans feels a vengeful fire ignite, swearing to make them pay. As a new day breaks over this cursed, silent village, the guard kicks open the warehouse doors, fuming about the chief's orders, and starts barking at the undead to get back into their rows. He stomps around like a toddler having a tantrum, delivering a brutal punch just to vent his petty frustration. Suddenly he stops, recognizing a familiar face among the walking corpses, sneering at a man who once tried to protect his family from the cult. "Oh, that is right. I ripped your tongue out, did not I?" he laughs, before casually kicking the man's head across the stone floor. He misses the days when hunting these villagers was actually fun, completely ignoring the way the victim's jaw rattles in the dark, as he mocks the man for finally being reunited with his wife. This guard starts mocking the victims, asking if they remember what happened to the kids. But he does not even finish the sentence before a zombie lunges out and sinks its teeth into his neck. Panicking, he screams for them to stop as the storage he treated like trash finally fights back, and even though he tries to summon a spell to blast them away, a pair of rotting hands clamps over his mouth, silencing his pathetic cries for help. It's a buffet of justice as the guards are torn apart by the very people they murdered, while Hans stands in the center of the chaos, watching his new army rise. His sockets ignite with a cold blue flame as he declares, "It's time for the victims to get their revenge." While the warehouse turns into a slaughterhouse, our boy's human avatar is busy at the front gates, playing the part of a worried brother and demanding to speak with the village chief. This old man finally shows his face, wondering what all the noise is about, stepping forward with that same fake, friendly smile he used to poison Hans. Our boy puts on an Oscar-worthy performance, acting terrified as he looks the killer in the eye, telling the chief, "My twin brother Hans is missing, and I know he's somewhere in this village." It's the ultimate 200-ick play, using his human body as a distraction, so his skeleton self can slip into the cult's inner sanctum completely undetected. Deep inside the temple, Hans finally finds it, the fragment of the immortal king, a jagged shard of pure darkness that seems to be rewriting the laws of life and death. Looking around the room, he realizes he stumbled into the real elite squad, muttering that the warehouse he woke up in was clearly just the dumping ground for the duds. Hans stares at the artifact, muttering, "Do not be a picky eater," before slamming the jagged shard straight into his own ribcage. A blinding explosion of necrotic energy erupts from his chest, while his human avatar keeps the chief busy by spinning a wild tale about being a twin who can magically sense his brother's location, though the old man is not buying it. Suddenly, the chief's face pales as he screams, "The fragment, something happened to it." He orders his men to just kill him, as a shadow streaks toward the temple. But as the guards lunge forward with their spears, Hans's human body vanishes into thin air, leaving them stabbing at nothing. Deep in the sanctum, our boy is fighting for his life as horrific visions flood his mind. Realizing that even with his system filtering the madness, the pressure is unbearable, he lets out a bone-chilling roar, wondering if any mortal could survive this agony, until a final, violent blast of mana shatters the room. A system window pings, announcing that the evolution process has officially begun, revealing his new, terrifying rank, the Immortal Wizard. Demilich, he's just unlocked Sinister Wisdom, granting him absolute mastery over every dark spell in existence. Meanwhile, a lazy guard named Fuyin is busy whining about his partner's incompetence, jumping out of his skin when a voice booms, "Fuyin, you useless fool." He scrambles to salute, lying through his teeth that everything is under control, before frantically yelling for his buddy Zephy to check on the fragment immediately. Fuyin peers through the bars, calling out for his partner Zephy, but he's met with a blinding flash of necrotic energy that shakes the entire room. Confused, he grumbles about the silence until he hears a sickening splat on the floor. Before he can even process the smell of rot, decaying hands clamp onto his shoulders, and he realizes he's not looking at a few escapees, but a full-blown swarm of the dead. Hans looms over him with those glowing blue eyes, casually asking, "Isn't the weather just perfect today?" This guard's brain short-circuits as he screams, "Impossible. How is a skeleton able to talk?" Desperate to survive, he gathers every ounce of mana he has left, screaming for them to get away as he unleashes a desperate magical blast. This explosion rips through the air, but as the smoke clears, the warehouse doors are gone. And Hans just steps through the wreckage, pouting, "Hey, don't ignore me, that hurts my feelings." Our boy realizes that, thanks to his new Sinister Wisdom, he can master any dark spell just by looking at it once, and he's ready to test that theory. A massive, bone-shaking explosion levels the nearby buildings. As Hans stands atop the rubble and looks down at his growing legion, he lets out a command that echoes through the night, "Kill every single human in this village, leave no one alive." It's absolute carnage as the victims finally turn the tables on their oppressors, leaving the village chief to stumble onto the scene and gasp, "What was that?" He stares at Hans, realizing this is not the elite skeleton he threw away like trash, as Elder Marcos Giacali demands to know what he did to the Immortal King's fragment. Hans greets the chief with a cold hello again, asking if the old man remembers him, reminding him that he is the one who ripped out his heart in the first place. But since he was feeling empty, he just helped himself to a new heart from the warehouse. This chief's face twists in pure rage, screaming that the fragment was wasted on such a pathetic vessel, and he does not waste another second, pointing a finger and shrieking, "Finger of death!" A beam of pure necrotic energy tears through the air, aiming straight for our boy's skull, but Hans just takes the hit like a champ, barely even rattling his bones. As he casually brushes it off, mocking the old man for having zero manners by attacking mid-sentence. "Shut it," the chief bellows, fuming over the fact that he spent an entire year cultivating that power, only for it to be used to turn a common skeleton into a Demilich. He summons Thorns of Darkness, massive jagged spikes of shadow meant to impale our boy where he stands, but Hans just stares them down, comparing the chief's magic to putting an endgame enchantment on a starter weapon. He laughs in the old man's face, telling him he only survived because he is built different, while the chief grows obsessed, vowing to dissect Hans's body after launching a wave of broken ectoplasm. Our boy easily dodges the blast, asking, "Do you really have to scream the spell names every single time?" He drops Alfred's name, making the chief realize this entire infiltration was a calculated revenge plot. And before the old man can even process the shock, a sudden surge of mana catches him off guard, leaving him to desperately throw up a magical shield as the pressure starts to mount. He realizes Hans's mastery over dark magic is evolving at a terrifying, abnormal speed, forcing him to finally go all in with his ultimate trump card, the Oath of Annihilation. This chief's desperate Oath of Annihilation backfires instantly, as his own men start screaming in agony while their very essences are ripped from their bodies. One guard gasps, all of the dark mage's souls are being drained, but it's too late to stop the manifestation of the Broken One's crown, a cursed artifact the old man slams onto his head to summon the sanctuary of the dead. Hans just watches the carnage with a bored expression, muttering, "Yikes, did he really just sacrifice his own squad for a buff?" This chief does not care, charging up a tainted flame of the soul for one final, pathetic stand. But he does not realize that Hans has already seen through every single one of his moves, before a massive beam of necrotic energy collides with the chief's chest, leaving him gasping on the ground as our boy tells him, "You almost put me to sleep with all those spell names. Let's finish this." Hans leans in close, his sockets glowing with malice as he adds, "Oh, and thanks for showing me so many dark magic spells." This old man can only stutter out a weak "I am possible," as his life force finally fades away, hitting the dirt with a heavy thud that signals the end of his reign of terror. Looking up at the night sky, Hans whispers to the wind, "Are you watching? I got you your revenge." As the spirit of Alfred finally finds peace, leaving our skeleton king alone in the ruins of the village. This chaos of the village fades as the story shifts to the towering spires of the holy cathedral, where a lone saintess is found kneeling in the cold silence of the inner sanctum. Her eyes snap open, glowing with an eerie golden light as if she can sense the dark power rising in the north. This heavy doors creak open as she calls out to the man entering the room, Bishop Martin. He just offers a gentle smile, asking if she's finished her prayers, completely unaware that a new god of death has just been born. Saintess Riesta looks absolutely shaken as she tells the bishop she needs to relay a message immediately, dropping the bombshell that she's picked up a sign of the immortal king's resurrection coming from the west, which sends the bishop rushing to summon the entire church while the saintess stares into the distance. Haunted by the memory of a villain who terrorized the entire continent centuries ago, she grits her teeth, vowing that she will make sure his resurrection is stopped no matter what. Meanwhile, back at the village, Hans is casually walking over the piles of bones and casualties, shrugging it off because he can always make more. That's just the perk of being a high-tier necromancer. He stops for a second, realizing he needs to fix up his own arm before moving on to the next phase. So our boy starts window shopping through the piles of corpses until he spots a donor that looks just right, casually snapping a fresh limb off a dead body and muttering, "This looks good." He activates extreme regeneration, and with a violent surge of purple mana, the new arm fuses to his socket. He gives it a quick twirl, declaring it's as good as new and time to start rebuilding his legion. Hans points a finger at the nearest corpse, commanding it to become my underling, as the ground begins to shake, letting his sinister wisdom guide the flow of energy as he weaves dark mana into the cold remains of the fallen, while the immortal king's fragment in his chest beats like a drum, fueling his every command. He's literally tainting the residual magic in their bodies to force their consciousness back into the world. But the first attempt is a total disaster as the bones just shatter into a million pieces, leaving Hans to just stand there looking disappointed, realizing that even with a broken system, he still needs practice. He tries again, focusing his intent until a swarm of zombies and skeletons finally start dragging themselves out of the dirt, and our boy just crosses his arms and smirks, realizing he's finally got the hang of this whole god of death thing. Hans looks down at the chief's corpse, muttering, "Now then," as he prepares to turn the old man into an undead with his soul intact for some juicy intel. But as the purple mana begins to swirl, our boy's sockets widen in confusion, because this high-tier mage doesn't even have a soul left to harvest. He rips open the chief's robes to find a glowing magic circle, realizing the soul was forcefully removed by some shadowy organization that clearly does not like leaving loose ends behind. Our boy just shrugs it off, deciding he'll just build the ultimate undead soldier, weaving dark energy into the residual magic still clinging to the corpse's veins. Focusing his intent, he draws out the last fragments of Malcolm's consciousness to implant an ego, and with a sudden flash of red and blue light, the transformation is complete. A new death wizard rises from the dirt, bowing low as he rasps, "I await your command." This skeleton king is hyped that his new subordinate can actually talk, officially naming him Malcolm, before giving him a quick whack to the skull to make sure he's responsive. Even if his memories are wiped, Hans vows to put him through absolute hell for his past crimes, leaving the newly born wizard to stand at attention while clutching his powerful staff. Hans eyes the weapon, nodding to himself because that staff looks like a top-tier loot drop. Scanning the massive pile of remains littering the village square, he eventually locks eyes with a familiar, rotting face buried in the heap. It's the very zombie that took out his old partner Zaraf while Hans watched helplessly, so he gently pats its head and whispers, "May you finally rest in peace." Hans stands amidst the flames, leaving the village to burn, while back home our guy is happily stuffing his face. He checks his phone, wondering, what is the price of gold? His inventory is literally overflowing with high-tier loot, so he decides to summon Hans into his apartment. A massive explosion rocks the room as the skeleton manifests, but the sheer pressure makes the air itself start to freeze. Our boy panics, shrieking, "Dismiss Avatar." Before he gets crushed, he collapses, gasping for air after that terrifying near-death experience. "I need an upgrade," he mutters, opening the Karma shop, dropping 300,000 points to boost his skill. And the system announces he can now possess more avatars, acquiring Clear Mind to shield himself from mental attacks. So he starts stuffing gold bars into ordinary paper bags. Now he can finally stand next to Hans without panicking, smirking because he always gets exactly what he needs. He heads straight for the exchange to sell his haul, dumping bags of pure gold coins onto the counter. This staff looks absolutely floored by the massive fortune. Leaving our boy to walk out with a fat bank account. Wanting to keep things low-key, our boy hides Hans in his shadow and slaps a creepy mask on the skeleton just in case he needs to appear, thinking he's worrying over nothing until a massive explosion rocks the street, as a literal beast of a werewolf starts looming over the panicking crowd, where these thugs are hyped, shouting about how they scored big today. After cleaning out a jewelry shop, but they're in too much of a rush to notice who's watching. So the werewolf zooms through the alleyways with his partner in crime, and crashes right into our boy who's just trying to mind his own business, identifying them as villains, trash who use their awakened powers to terrorize the weak. And for a second it looks like Seonghyun Han is absolutely paralyzed with fear, while the trauma of his past comes rushing back as the world explodes around him. Before the werewolf just decks him across the face, barking, "Out of my way," our guy collapses, clutching his head and praying for the guardians to save him, as he trembles and mutters that there's absolutely nothing a weakling like him can do, since the villains think they've got a clean getaway before the heroes arrive. But when they reach their extraction point to find their teammate, they find the girl known as Portal passed out cold on the floor. As they rush to wake her up, a massive shadow falls over them, and they spin around to see a masked skeleton, gasping, "Who are you?" "A guardian." Because while Seonghyun cannot do anything, Hans is about to show them what real terror looks like. These villains are absolutely losing it as the ground crumbles beneath them, while Hans towers over them, proving that while a weakling cannot do anything, a god of death definitely can. This local guardians are already sprinting toward the warehouse, desperate to catch the thugs before they vanish into the night again. But as they burst through the doors, the lead investigator completely freezes, staring at the absolute carnage left behind by a mystery fighter. He realizes someone took down these high-tier villains and dipped before anyone could notice, and since the bodies are still warm, he knows the culprit is lurking nearby. "Search the perimeter," he barks, sending his team scrambling through the shadows, completely missing the dark mist that's currently slithering across the floor, and sliding back into the shadow of a seemingly ordinary bystander. Seonghyun just lets out a long, satisfied stretch, thinking that a little vigilante justice is the perfect way to blow off some steam. Now that he has got the hang of his powers, he decides to test out his second avatar, Heinz. Manifesting the tough warrior right in front of a massive fantasy castle. It turns out that Old Man was not lying about the city to the east, so our boy prepares for his big debut in this new world. But as he steps past the gates and looks for a place to grab a drink, he realizes the entire city is eerily quiet and completely deserted. "Are you kidding me?" he mutters, wondering why a place this big does not even have guards at the gate. A local thug is currently breathing down a young girl's neck, demanding she cough up 2 silver coins in 3 days or face the consequences, while our boy watches from the shadows, thinking this whole situation is way too predictable, until the girl accidentally slams right into him while trying to escape, bowing her head and apologizing like her life depends on it, as he just stares her down, asking if she knows her way around this city. While the poor girl looks up in total shock, wondering who this mysterious traveler is. So he flashes a stack of silver with a sharp grin, declaring, "I'm the man who's going to hire you," making her eyes practically turn into stars as he offers to discuss the terms of their deal, before she leads him straight to the best inn in town to prove her worth, where we learn Diana has been struggling to survive while caring for her sick brother. So our guy hands over a down payment and tells her to meet him at sunrise, as he collapses onto the bed, thinking that even if she runs off with the cash, he can just count it as a random act of kindness for the day. But when morning rolls around, he wakes up sneezing and cursing the rock-hard mattress, only to hear a tiny achoo echoing from right outside his window, where he peeks out to find Diana shivering on the street, waiting for him to start the day. And she just beams at him, asking why he's finally awake so early in the morning, leading them to grab a quick meal while he grumbles about her showing up way before the sun, telling her to drop the Sir act because he is just here to get some work done. Diana eyes his plate asking, excuse me, are you going to finish that? And he just shrugs, telling her to take it if she is that hungry. As they head out, we learn this place is Azantu, a small city in the kingdom of Talia. That looks like a standard medieval town, but our boy senses something is seriously wrong. When he spots a terrifying symbol painted on a nearby wall, he touches the mark, realizing with a chill that it is not paint, it is fresh blood. Diana starts sniffing the air like a bloodhound, muttering about what happened last night, before she shocks him by asking, "You had venison soup, right?" This girl just laughs it off, claiming she has a really good nose, but he is starting to wonder if she is hiding an ability. That is the symbol of Varkalak, she explains, the organization that rules these streets. Suddenly, she freezes mid-sentence, her face turning pale as a ghost, while a strange, dark scent wafts through the narrow alleyway. Taking another deep breath, her eyes narrow with intense focus. Only to shout that it's the smell of freshly baked bread and he absolutely has to try it. Our guy just sighs, asking if she's not full yet, but she's already sprinting toward the bakery. While they play around, the shadows of the city are hiding a much darker reality, as a lifeless body is dragged into the darkness, leaving a trail of blood behind. Fast forward a few days, and our boy is leaning against a wall, wondering where Diana is. Since she's never been late before until a rough voice barks, "Oi, you there?" He looks up to find two massive thugs looming over him, asking if he's got a moment. Hines immediately tries to play it smart by offering up a handful of silver, bowing like a total coward while telling the thugs he just wants to keep the streets safe. As they laugh, he spots the Varkalak symbol tattooed right on the leader's neck, making him realize just how much these monsters must have tormented poor Diana. He watches them walk away, but freezes when he overhears them asking why they had to snatch a kid, and his blood runs cold as he wonders if they've already laid their hands on his guide. "Hey," he barks, stomping toward the massive thugs with a sudden surge of confidence, deciding that even if things get ugly, he can just dispel his avatar and vanish into thin air. He demands an answer, but the thugs just turn around with the most murderous glares imaginable. And for a second, he completely loses his nerve when he spots Diana watching from the shadows. This thugs loom over him like a mountain, sneering. "So, you were saying," our boy instantly switches back to weakling mode, stuttering that he was just wondering if they wanted more cash. They end up stripping him of every last coin, leaving him holding a pathetic, empty pouch. So he takes his frustration out on Diana, yelling at her for being late and ruining his breakfast. But the girl just looks up with tears streaming down her face, whispering that her brother is gone. She's absolutely inconsolable, sobbing that he was finally getting better before he vanished without a trace. That's when the pieces finally click in his head, remembering the thugs bragging about kidnapping a child, and he asks if the Varkalak organization is the type to go around snatching little kids off the street. He tries to play it cool, telling her he will just pay the ransom, but Diana completely collapses in terror. "They do not want money," she screams. "If they have Aaron, they're going to kill him for his blood." Hines stands frozen as the realization hits him incredibly hard, learning that this entire city is just a food supply for vampires. High above, a mysterious caped noble sniffs the air for dark magic, wondering if the thugs were fighting over the immortal king's fragment. Before flashing a pair of lethal fangs and a predatory grin, he's confident he can track down whoever stole his prize quickly, revealing that every gang in Azantu is just a puppet for vampires. Diana's voice cracks as she explains that nobody who flees ever survives, and they've been living in constant terror just to see another day. She's convinced it's only a matter of time before they're both devoured, but Hines suddenly grabs her face and barks, "Diana, get it together." He knows time is running out and demands to know Aaron's location, making the poor girl look up with a tiny spark of hope. Our boy just drops a cold smirk, telling her not to worry, because teaching bad guys a lesson is his specialty as he commences the operation. Moments later, he goes all in by slamming silver onto a table, where the thugs are snickering about fleecing a clueless outsider earlier today. This door bangs open and Hines steps in with a dark look, making the thugs spring up and demand to know who he is. This leader sneers, "Look, the clueless outsider is back for another good deed." This thugs start laughing, thinking our boy is back to hand over even more cash, but Hines just grabs the leader's head and asks where they took the kid. This guy actually has the nerve to poke him, asking if they are friends now, right before Hines draws his blade and paints the wall red in a single motion. He pins the trash to the floor, growling that he knows exactly who they are. Monsters who tear families apart just to satisfy their own pathetic greed. "One down, two to go," he declares, leaving the first thug gasping on the floor, while the others freak out, screaming that he has no idea what he has gotten into. Hines just zooms forward, confident that, with his insane regeneration skills, he can handle whatever these lowlifes throw at him in this cramped room. One thug manages to land a direct stab right into his side, but his eyes bulge out when the blade does not even scratch the surface. Hines does not waste a second, burying his knife into the guy's throat, while bragging that his ballistic vest was made with top-tier Korean tech. This final thug swings a massive axe with everything he has got, only for a high-tech magic shield to flare up and block the strike cold. "That is 3, Hines mutters, ending the last one before he can even process. How a random traveler is walking around with a literal arsenal of magical artifacts. He takes a breath, realizing he might have gone a bit overboard since he did not even use half his gear. But the party's just getting started as a whole mob of thugs comes rushing down the stairs. Heinz realizes he spoke too soon as a dozen more thugs swarm him, forcing him to start a body count that quickly climbs past 8, as he stands amidst the wreckage, wondering how many more of these trash mobs are going to try their luck even after one manages to graze his ear, only for his regeneration to kick in and seal the wound instantly, before he pins the leader under his boot, demanding to know where the kid is. But the thug just spits blood and sneers that he's going to regret messing with them once their master arrives to turn him into a corpse. So Heinz just stares him down with cold eyes, thanking him for the advice. 550, right before delivering a brutal kick that sends the guy straight to sleep. This pressure rises as the dangerous clash keeps escalating. Then he kicks open the final door and finds a small, terrified boy huddling in the corner, begging for his life while shaking like a leaf, as Heinz softens his voice, telling Aaron that his sister sent him to bring him home. But as they prepare to make their escape, a shadow flutters over the roof, and a single bat lands on the windowsill with an ominous thud, until the creature transforms in a burst of dark energy, catching our boy off guard. As a pale, clawed hand reaches out while a voice asks why he's meddling with the food in his restaurant, revealing a high-ranking vampire noble, who warns that anyone standing against them is already dead. But Heinz just smirks, telling the monster he's just an outsider looking for a refund. This bloodthirsty noble just sneers that Heinz is boring, declaring he prefers devouring young boys before launching a lethal strike. That forces our boy to grab Aaron and scream, "Watch out," as the room literally explodes under the weight of the vampire's power. They crash into a pool of spilled wine, leaving Heinz gasping for air, while he desperately checks if the kid is still in one piece. "Now's your chance, run for it," he yells, trying to buy Aaron a few seconds, as the monster cracks his knuckles, admitting Heinz is faster than he looks. This noble lunges forward with a terrifying screech, eager to start his meal. But Heinz just shoves the boy toward the exit, barking at him never to look back. Steel meets supernatural bone in a shower of sparks, but the speed difference is absolutely insane as the noble closes the gap. A sickening plunge echoes through the room as claws rip right through Heinz's chest, making him realize that even with his regeneration, this monster is on a whole different level. This vampire just licks his lips, calling our boy an exquisite delicacy, while Heinz grits his teeth, refusing to let this be the end of his story. "I will need to tenderize you a little," the noble mocks, delivering another brutal slash. That leaves Heinz pinned and bleeding as the monster demands he stops struggling. He leans in close for the kill, whispering that it is time to face the consequences. But Heinz just flashes a savage grin, deciding if he's going down, he is taking this freak with him. Heinz ignores the claws through his chest as he ignites a flame in his mouth, making the noble freak out and demand to know when he hit a fire artifact there. It turns out our boy noticed the spilled alcohol on the floor earlier, and used a hidden ignition needle to turn himself into a human bomb. This vampire realizes the floor is about to ignite and screams that they will both die. But Heinz just tightens his grip, refusing to let the monster escape the blast. This bloodsucker tries to act superior one last time, calling him pathetic, only for Heinz to shut him up with a bone-shattering headbutt. "You said it yourself, I am tough and I heal fast," he mocks, roaring that he's going to be a little too hard for this freak to chew. That vampire's arrogance turns to pure terror as he begs for mercy, right before the entire room vanishes in a blinding explosion. Fire consumes the building, turning the vampire's restaurant into a funeral pyre, leaving Heinz staring at the ceiling while the flames lick at his broken body. He's barely clinging to life, realizing that being this durable is actually a curse, when you are forced to feel every second of your own disintegration. Still, he closes his eyes with a faint smile, knowing that his mission to save the siblings was a total success as they watch from the street. Diana's scream echoes through the night as the structure finally collapses, and a cold system window confirms that Heinz has died with a 7-day wait for respawn. Back in the city, a wealthy man dismisses his shoe shiner, leaving a few coins behind as Aaron bows in gratitude. But just as the kid wipes the sweat from his brow, a familiar voice asks for a shine, making Aaron's heart stop as he looks up and sees a face he never expected to see again, screaming, "Mister, you are actually alive," while lunging for a massive hug as Heinz laughs. "You think I'd die that easily?" Even though it's a total lie since his main body actually perished, forcing him to wait a full week for a proper respawn. "Might as well give my backup a go," he decides, activating Heinz II, a high-speed avatar built for pure haste. He hopes Diana will not notice he's rocking a brand new body, but Aaron does not care about the looks because he knows that the scent of Heinz's soul is exactly the same. This kid panics, warning him that the vampires are still hunting, but our boy just smirks, telling him not to worry, because with his immortal king title, these bloodsuckers are zero threat. He checks his system, realizing his portal is on a 10-day cooldown, meaning he's stuck here longer than planned, just as a shadow shatters the glass and a clawed hand grips his throat, This vampire's hand clamps around Heinz's throat like a total vice, as he growls that the tracks from the forest led him straight to this room. An outsider just happens to show up where one of my kind was killed, he sneers, while Heinz grits his teeth, unable to muster even an ounce of strength against this monster. This noble leans in, sniffing for any trace of dark magic or vampire blood, but our boy plays it cool, claiming he was just sleeping and has no idea what's happening. This creature just flashes a terrifying, fanged grin, asking if he really does not have a clue, before sinking his teeth deep into Heinz's neck with a sickening, wet crunch. He wipes the blood from his lips, coldly suggesting they try their little chat again. Because this time, lying is going to be physically impossible for his brand new pet. A system window shatters the silence, announcing that Heinz's race has been forcibly changed to vampire. He's hit with a notification for a new skill, Bloodkin, low blood, as he collapses to his knees, feeling his regeneration evolve while an insane weight of authority crushes his very soul. Every drop of blood in his body screams at him to submit to this Lord Wurak. But as he looks up with glowing eyes, he realizes he can actually ignore the command. It turns out his mind hub is working like a high-tech filter, suppressing the instinct to obey, making the noble think he's just a failed experiment before ordering Heinz to follow him. Our boy just smirks, deciding to play the part of a loyal dog to infiltrate their inner circle. They arrive at the massive Varkaslak clan headquarters under a sky filled with lightning, where a crowd of bloodsuckers bows low, welcoming their master back to the nest. This crowd immediately starts whispering about the wretched thing Lord Wurak just dragged in, but before Heinz can even scan the room, a bubbly vampire girl tackles him in a massive hug. This drunkard introduces herself as Rasilica, grinning like she's found a new favorite toy, and tells our boy to relax because they're both just lowbloods in this den of monsters. She shoves a glass of fresh blood into his hand, forcing Heinz to realize that if he wants to keep his cover, he's going to have to actually drink the stuff. One sip hits him with a wave of bloodlust so violent it nearly bypasses his mind hub, making him realize he has to manually shut off his senses just to keep from losing his mind. He plays it cool and thanks her, but Rasilica just stares him down with a predatory look, admitting he's totally her type and asking how he does not know what a lowblood even is. She's shocked he's this clueless about the hierarchy of their kind, explaining that while lowbloods are the knights, purebloods like Wurak are the true nobles. Above them sit the royal truebloods and then the sacred bloods, vampire deities, that every single one of them must submit to unconditionally or face total erasure. Suddenly, the room goes silent as a high-ranking noble clinks his glass for attention, announcing that the meeting of the Varkaslak clan is officially in session. A pureblood named Farida drops a bombshell, revealing that a fragment of the immortal king has gone missing, while another named Teopal warns that the artifact was last seen heading straight for the city. Heinz's heart skips a beat at the mention of his own title, especially when he learns the vow of the abyss mages he slaughtered were the ones protecting it. This Varkaslak clan officially mobilizes, ordering every member to scour the city for any sign of the missing artifact, forcing Heinz and Rasilica to patrol the streets. Under a sun that makes their new vampire bodies feel absolutely lethargic, Rasilica grumbles that bringing their own fragment here was a total waste of time, making Heinz freeze as he realizes these monsters actually have a second piece of his soul. She explains the plan was to merge it with the mage's fragment once their ritual was done, giving our boy a golden opportunity to steal back his power from the pureblood guarding it. He grabs her, demanding to know where the treasure is hidden, but she just laughs in his face, reminding him that lowbloods like them are kept in the dark. Just as he hits a dead end, Aaron looks up from his meal and casually mentions that he might actually know exactly where the immortal king's fragment is being kept. Heinz nearly chokes on his own breath, his shout echoing through the building, as he demands to know how a street kid could possibly have intel on a legendary artifact. Aaron admits he is not 100% sure since it's been a full year, but back when he was working a side hustle cleaning up the local graves, he noticed the high-ranking Varkaslak members visiting a specific stone chamber every single Friday. He describes a scent so sinister and evil leaking from the tomb that it made his skin crawl, confirming Heinz's suspicion that the cemetery is the heart of the vampire's operations. Our boy smirks, telling the kids to stay hidden while he goes to reclaim what's his. But before he can leave, Aaron grabs his sleeve with a look of pure desperation. Aaron leans in, whispering that he can smell something is seriously off with Heinz's scent, and our boy just flashes a fanged grin, admitting he can't hide his new nature from the kid's nose. This kid starts shaking like a leaf, but Heinz promises he'll never let this curse hurt his friends. Aaron grips his sleeve, looking absolutely terrified for his mentor's sanity, before blurting out that if the hunger gets too bad, Heinz can actually drink his blood. He's trembling with fear, begging him to just take a little bit so he does not lose control. Our boy just gives him a sharp bonk on the head, asking what kind of nonsense he's spewing, before demanding the exact location of that foul-smelling tomb so he can end this nightmare. This scene shifts to the local cemetery under a full moon, where a blood-curdling scream rips through the silence. Deep inside a stone chamber, a sadistic vampire looms over a broken man, ordering him to stand up properly. This poor guy is covered in gashes, clutching a sword while the monster asks if he's ready to die. This noble sneers, "If you can even graze me with that blade, I'll let you walk away alive." Desperation takes over as the human grips his hilt, knowing this is his only shot at survival. He lunges forward with a primal roar, swinging with every ounce of strength he has left. But the noble just sighs at how savage and pathetic the attempt really is. Suddenly, dozens of razor-sharp blood tendrils erupt from the floor, piercing the man's limbs. He's hoisted into the air, trapped in a web of gore as the life is literally sucked out of him. His eyes roll back as he screams in terror, feeling the magic feast on his very soul. Within seconds, he's nothing but a shriveled husk, a victim of the clan's twisted games. This creature just turns away, muttering that the hunt was too boring to even count as entertainment. Lord Teopal looks down at the shriveled remains, coldly ordering his servant to dispose of this trash, and bring him a sacrifice that actually has some fight in them. This servant goes to grab the body but freezes, sensing a presence in the dark, before a swarm of skeletons erupts from the shadows, tearing him apart. Teopal is caught off guard, demanding to know how these vile corpses even got inside. But he does not wait for an answer, ordering his remaining servants to remove these disgusting things at once. These are not your average undead, though, as they surge forward with a terrifying blue energy. That detonates in a massive shockwave, turning the stone chamber into a total war zone. This noble grits his teeth, asking if the intruder is some necromancer from the Vow of the Abyss, while demanding to know how a mere human could have found their secret lair. A hooded skeleton steps into the light, blue flames dancing in its empty sockets, and Teopal just sneers. "Looks like you have no intention of talking. Well, no matter." He vows to get his answers even if he has to leave nothing but a skull behind, lunging forward with a blood-red strike that carves through the air like a razor. He shatters the front line of the undead army, sending ribs and femurs flying, but the hooded leader just grips its fist, mockingly asking, "Just my skull." Suddenly, the room is filled with a blinding flash of blue lightning and bone spikes. As the skeleton swings its arm, daring the arrogant vampire to try and survive, Teopal's heart drops as skeletal hands burst from the floor, pinning him in place, while he realizes with horror that the incoming spell is way too fast to dodge. Lord Teopal's guard rushes in, shouting for his master, as the sounds of clashing steel echo through the chamber. And this minion reports that the timing is perfect to crush the intruders. He claims Lord Wurek's thralls are already holding the line outside, while Teopal orders him to provide backup against the powerful Demilich. This vampire dashes forward, desperate to stall for reinforcements, but he's silenced instantly as Heinz sinks his fangs deep into his neck, forcing the guard to bulge his eyes in shock and scream that this lowblood has lost his mind. Dark energy begins to surge through our boy's veins as he drains the life away, and realization hits the dying monster that Heinz and the Lick are actually working together, begging for mercy while the skeletal summon looms over the bloody battlefield. He warns that devouring your own kind is a sin that will rot the soul, but his voice fades into a pathetic whimper as his body shrivels into a husk. Heinz just stands over the remains, coldly muttering, "Taints the mind, not a problem for me." A system alert pings, announcing he's just inherited the forbidden skill, blood magic. He realizes he could use this new power to carefully dismantle the blood barrier, but our boy is done playing games and decides to just blow the whole thing to hell. One massive explosion rips through the stone chamber, sending debris flying everywhere, as Heinz and his undead companion peer into the smoking crater, where the second fragment of the immortal king pulses with a sinister, dark light. Heinz reaches for the pulsing fragment, whispering, "Here I go," as he prepares for the impact, but he's instantly slammed by a blast of dark thoughts so overwhelming they threaten to shatter his mind. Even with his system filtering the noise, the sheer malice leaking from the soul piece is too much, forcing him to channel the collective mental strength of all his avatars directly into Hands. A violent eruption of purple energy levels the chamber, sending a shockwave through the entire cemetery. As the surviving vampires stare at the rising smoke, praying they are not already too late to stop him. High above the wreckage, the skeletal avatar floats like a harbinger of death against the moonlit sky, and the panicked guards scream for everyone to open fire before the monster can move again. Spells and blood bolts splat against the Lick's bones, shredding its cloak in a desperate barrage. But the undead king just waves a hand, blue flames dancing in its ribs as it ignores the pain. One massive blast of spectral energy detonates, turning the elite guards into nothing but red mist. Lord Teopal's face pales as he stammers. Is that, finally realizing he's picked a fight with a god, just as a system alert pings, announcing that extreme regeneration has evolved into total immortality. Our boy has officially ascended his summon into an arch-lick, an entity overflowing with forbidden knowledge. Miles away, holy knights on horseback spot the dark pillar of energy and cannot believe their eyes. This commander realizes the corruption is coming from Azantu, a city that was supposed to be safe, image 757, while his men begin to choke on the thick, suffocating pressure suddenly filling the air. He holds his ground as the situation unfolds. He barks an order to turn the horses around, shouting that the Saintess needs to hear about this immediately. He catches a flake of black soot, his voice trembling as he realizes these are not just mere ashes. They're a sign of impending doom, a dark omen that the true king of the dead has finally returned. This dust settles on a graveyard of bones as the air vibrates with the terrifying aura of the immortal king's resurrection. Lord Teopal stammers in disbelief, realizing the monster before him has suddenly become 10 times more powerful than before. Hans has officially ascended into an archlich, a legendary undead entity that will keep resurrecting unless his core is pulverized. Armed with sinister wisdom and forbidden knowledge, the skeletal king begins to channel a spell that defies the laws of nature, proving he's attained complete mastery over every dark secret hidden within the abyss. A wave of pure necrotic energy sweeps through the chamber, drowning the screams of the elite guards in a sea of shadows. Lord Wurak watches his men get erased, frantically demanding to know what kind of twisted plot is unfolding. One of his subordinates begs for a retreat, but a massive skeletal hand looms over him like the shadow of death itself. This vampire is yanked into the darkness with a sickening crunch, leaving Wurak completely isolated and trembling with rage. He tries to mount a defense, but the suffocating pressure of the archlich makes his very blood feel like ice. Dozens of obsidian spikes erupt from the ground, skewering the noble through his chest and pinning him like a common insect. Hans steps out of the smoke, mockingly admitting that Wurak was certainly stronger than the other purebloods he slaughtered. He leans in close, whispering that the high-end mighty noble is now nothing more than a sack of blood waiting to be drained. Wurak gasps, unable to comprehend how a mere human could endure the fragment's madness without his mind shattering into pieces. Heinz steps out from the shadows behind his summon, chillingly replying, "Well, that is because we are not alone. Before the noble can even blink, our boy sinks his fangs into his throat, tearing away his life force in one brutal strike." A system alert flashes as the evolution completes, announcing that Heinz has officially ascended from a low blood to a pure blood. He wipes the gore from his chin with a dark smirk, declaring, "I am going to eat every last one of you vampires." His surviving clan members flee through the woods, desperately asking Lady Farida what their next move should be. She looks back at the rising pillar of darkness, knowing that with Lord Wurak fallen, they've just unleashed a god-tier predator. This survivor stares at the smoldering ashes, realizing the mana left behind is terrifyingly dense. And she orders a full retreat to headquarters before the rising sun finishes what the Lich started. Meanwhile, a lone Varkulak member sprints through the back alleys, his lungs burning from the carnage, cursing his luck as his boots slam against the cobblestones in a desperate bid for survival. He stops to catch his breath, mocking the mighty vampires who fell so easily to a human. But his heart stops as a skeletal hand grips his shoulder and Hans whispers a cold greeting from the shadows. A sickening crunch echoes through the street, marking the end of the last Varkulak member in the city. While Heinz hires a merchant band to smuggle Diana and her brother far away from the wreckage. Our boy is actually playing chef now, seasoning some steaks like he did not just commit a massacre. And the kid's eyes light up as he presents the meal, shouting a "Wow, that feels normal again." They dig in immediately, thanking him for the food while Heinz just tells them to eat up. He watches them smile, realizing that leaving that hellhole has finally lifted the weight from their hearts. Looking toward the horizon, he asks if their uncle still runs that shop in Raffla City to the east. Diana admits she's worried their relative will not be happy to see them, but Heinz says not to sweat it. If things get rocky, he's already decided to just pay the man off, having grown attached to them. And he catches himself smiling, wondering when was the last time he felt this human since coming to this world. Noticing him spacing out, the girl leans in close and her voice drops to a concerned whisper. She asks if he is doing all right or if he needs some blood to keep his strength up. But Heinz just laughs it off, assuring her he's plenty satisfied after devouring every elite vampire in Azantu. As Hans stays behind to shove the remaining souls into his army, ordering them to get in there. Hans marvels at how this pocket dimension is super convenient and seemingly bottomless, realizing that if he refines his forbidden knowledge further, he could open this portal on Earth. Out of nowhere, a vortex of blood energy swirls through the air, and a crimson bolt slams into the archlich with a violent thwack. A new challenger steps out of the gloom, sneering, "You're still loitering in our city, you must think little of us." This is Oval Brockaslak, a trueblood vampire who demands to know if Hans is part of the Vow of the Abyss. Hans decides to lean into the lie, cracking a bone-chilling grin as he replies, "That is right, I am Hans of the Vow of the Abyss." Oval calls his bluff, realizing someone already wrecked their hideout and accusing Hans of stealing the fragment. He manifests a terrifying blood scythe that shimmers with a lethal light, and with a roar of "This is where you die," he charges like a red blur. A massive slash tears through the chamber as their powers clash in a spray of sparks, but Hans just watches the blade whiz past his face with supernatural calm. He admits that was a close one, but he's already preparing a blast to send this vampire to the grave. Even our boy is impressed, noting that these truebloods are definitely no pushovers in a real fight. He tries to back off, but he's suddenly stopped by a massive thud against a glowing red wall. Oval mocks him, revealing that his clan's elite blood mages have already sealed the entire area with barriers. Hans knows he could break through with effort, but he needs a moment to fully adjust to his new archlich form. This vampire noble prepares to grind his skull to dust, desperate to reclaim the fragment hidden within. But Hans just lets out a dark hehe, telling the noble to remember his name well, as he glares like death incarnate, promising, "I am stepping away for now, but I will hunt you down myself next time." Hans decides to lean into the role, declaring that leaving with style is the true hallmark of a villain. And Heinz instantly triggers the dismissal command, causing the archlich to vanish in a violent blast of energy. This elite guards are left standing in the smoke, completely baffled by the lame, parting words of the monster they were just fighting. Oval gasps in pure disbelief, unable to comprehend how his target just bypassed a high-level barrier like it was nothing. But a heavy thud echoes through the chamber as a new threat makes its presence known. He stares at a gleaming silver arrow embedded in the floor, realizing it is the signature weapon of the Holy Paladins. A panicked subordinate screams that they're in deep trouble, pointing toward the horizon as the ground begins to shake. This paladins of the Order of the Divine are charging into the graveyard, their holy blades glowing with the intent to purge every undead in sight. Oval snarls in rage, cursing that blasted lick for setting them up to take the fall for the entire massacre. He crushes his fist until his knuckles bleed, realizing Hans only stayed behind to waste their time and lure the church right to their doorstep. As the sun begins to rise over the city, the noble lets out a blood-curdling roar, vowing to hunt Hans down and kill him no matter where he hides. Meanwhile, back in the safety of his room, Heinz does a victory dance because being able to dismiss avatars is the ultimate cheat key. He thinks back to the Archlich's final moments, where he stood tall and proclaimed himself as death incarnate from the vow of the abyss. But the reality of his own words suddenly hits him like a freight train, making his face turn beet red. He collapses onto his bed, kicking his legs in pure agony as he screams about how embarrassing that edgy line actually was. He clutches his head, wondering what was wrong with him while his skeletal summon just sits there drying its skull with a towel. After a moment of self-loathing, he tries to look on the bright side, admitting that he actually handled the situation pretty well. He basically dismantled a whole vampire organization single-handedly, saved the city, and rescued those kids from certain doom. A smug smirk returns to his face as he realizes that, when he puts it that way, he actually sounds like a legendary hero. And he stretches his tired limbs, eager to see just how many karma points he racked up after such a massive slaughter. Heinz opens the karma shop, eager to see the rewards of his recent carnage. His jaw nearly hits the floor as he stares at the screen in pure shock. He's sitting on over 700,000 points, wondering how he got so filthy rich. It hits him that playing the vampires and dark mages against each other paid off big time. Without wasting a second, he dumps 300,000 points into a massive skill upgrade. A notification pings, confirming he can now summon even more avatars to do his dirty work. He unlocks a mysterious new special skill called Persona and wonders if it's a mind hub. But as he reads the description, the smirk vanishes and his blood runs cold. This skill literally uses his summons as vessels to contain his own human emotions. He realizes the system is giving him exactly what he needs to survive this brutal world. Looking back, he remembers the friends he made and the smiles he shared with the kids, and how he fought like a demon to protect those who had absolutely nothing left. Despite all that, he knows the truth behind his sudden courage is actually pretty dark. He's been treating this entire reality like a video game just to keep his sanity intact. In his heart, he's still that same lonely recluse hiding away from the world in a dark room. This uncomfortable truth is finally laid bare, and he cannot run from his own mind anymore. Every ounce of loneliness, sadness, and rage begins bubbling up to the surface. He turns to his archlich and commands, "Hands, take all of it from me." A dark mist swirls as he pours every festering emotion into the skeletal king's hollow chest. This makes him feel better, like he's finally tucked his trauma away in a locked drawer. Heinz asks if Hans is okay after absorbing all that trauma. But the archlich shrugs it off as a minor inconvenience. Our boy freezes, realizing his own personality is shifting into something colder, as Hans explains that these avatars develop personas based on stored emotions. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the building, snapping Heinz back to reality. As he spins around, demanding to know what that noise was, he looks at the rising smoke, wondering if another villain is attacking. But he tries to ignore it, hoping the Guardians handle the mess. A chilling question echoes, "Why do you need a reason to kill evil?" Hans leans in close, forcing Heinz to confront his own cowardice. With his negative emotions gone, Heinz finally sees with terrifying clarity, admitting to himself that he's just been running from his shadow. He wants to crush villains, but fear has always held him back. Hans slips on a mask, noting that outlaws are infesting the land, and he declares, "I shall become the harbinger of their reckoning." A pillar of blue mana erupts, signaling the hunt has begun. Down in the streets, thugs stand over their latest path of destruction. unaware that Hans is watching, refusing to leave them empty-handed. A massive spectral eye snaps open, pulsing with lethal light, as Hans commands his spies to become his eyes in the shadows. Hans sends his spectral eyes out, ordering them to seek out every sinner lurking in the darkness. In a filthy alleyway, a low-life thug casually asks for an ashtray. While his buddies hold down a student, laughing as they call him a human ashtray, they do not realize a glowing blue eye is watching their every move from the shadows. Desperate pleas for mercy echo through a cramped apartment, where a monster looms over his family with a belt as they tremble in terror. He screams at them to stop lying, unaware that judgment is watching from the wall. This sound of shattering glass suddenly rings out, as a masked burglar slips into a store chuckling because he has hit the jackpot. He gloats that the register is filled to the brim, but the eye has already marked him. Suddenly, Hans manifests, declaring, "You may not be villains, but you are all scum that must be punished." Before the burglar can blink, a spectral hand crushes his windpipe, and in an instant, Hans is snatching the abusive father off his feet. He teleports to the alley, catching the bully's wrist in a vice-like grip. While whispering a terrifying ultimatum, "Seeds of evil, remember this day well," he squeezes until they cannot breathe, forcing them to feel true terror. "If your evil takes root again," he growls, "you will encounter me in the shadows." A chorus of agonizing screams and snapping bones erupts across the city. Hans flexes his fingers, hungrily admitting, "More, I need more." With dozens of eyes swirling, he realizes there is still so much trash to cleanse. Hans looks down at the urban sprawl, declaring that this entire city needs a serious purification. A satisfied grunt escapes him as he stretches his limbs, feeling absolutely refreshed after spending the whole night scrubbing the streets of human filth. Examining his eye of darkness, he admits it's useful, but definitely has some annoying drawbacks. This moment sunlight hits the orb, it disintegrates, forcing him to find a better way to track his prey. Releasing a horde of zombies on the sidewalks is not an option, but a sudden splat on his head interrupts his train of thought. Furious, he screams at the pigeons, vowing to kill them and turn them into his undead minions. But as he watches them fly away, a brilliant idea finally clicks. He needs eyes that are everywhere, creatures that can move freely through the city without drawing a single glance. Familiars are the obvious answer, a dark magic used to bend animals to a master's will. However, actually controlling these feathered rats turns out to be way harder than he expected. Hiding out in a trashed goblin den, he throws a tantrum, wondering why a high-level lick is struggling with basic birds. His goal is to make these spies look perfectly normal while being highly contagious with his command magic. And as he starts debugging his spells like a stressed-out coder, he names his latest attempt Final Edit 2 Final 3. Leaning in close to the cage, he holds his breath to see if this version actually works, only for a terrifying, multi-eyed monster cat to burst out and try to rip his face off. After 3 weeks of failed trials and near-death experiences, he admits he's made zero progress. Turning to his very last specimen, he knows he's officially out of chances to get this right. This bird will not stop fluttering, making him snap as he tries to perfectly balance his mana output. One last actual final spell erupts from his hands, praying this is the one that finally creates his ultimate spy network. Hans wipes his brow, whispering, "Phew, I finally did it," as the bird takes off like a rocket, leaving him praying this version actually sticks. At first glance, the pigeons look like every other feathered rat in the city, but as one lands among the flock, the real test begins, when the mana spreads like a virus, turning their eyes a piercing, lethal red. Hans lets out a triumphant shout. All right, it's a total success. He stands tall among the shadows, realizing these infected animals are now his ultimate eyes and ears. With a single command, he sends them soaring, ordering them to go, find my enemies. Deep in the woods, Archbishop Ladius and his knight are hot on the trail, still haunted by the memory of Hans declaring himself death incarnate. Sir Tuscan steps forward with a grim update, admitting the captured vampires know nothing about the immortal king's successor. Ladius narrows his eyes, growling that they need leads before the king becomes unstoppable, only for the holy relic in his hand to begin rattling with a violent golden light. He clutches the cross, whispering, "Yes, Saintess, I feel his presence again." A divine vision flashes through his mind, pointing him toward a hidden cave in the mountains. As Ladius bows his head in a solemn vow, promising he will not fail her this time. High above the tree line, a dark, jagged cave sits in total silence, where Hans is chilling, confident his new spy network will alert him to any monsters. But his smirk vanishes instantly as he mutters, Hold on a second." Hans senses a disturbance in the force as his land-based familiars start bolting, realizing that even the rats are shaking in their fur because something massive is coming. It's not a monster, though it's a full-blown cavalry of humans charging through the brush. Hans panics, wondering how anyone tracked him to this middle-of-nowhere cave. But as he looks out, he sees an entire army has already perfectly surrounded his front door. Before he can even react, a stray arrow thwacks right through his spy pigeon, and Sir Tuscan's voice booms, "Hands of the Vow of the Abyss, your tricks are over." This night looms over him like a shadow of death, claiming no evil can hide from the divine. He draws a blade pulsing with holy lightning, barking, "Surrender and face the judgment of God." Hans recognizes that emblem instantly. It's a high-ranking paladin from the order he once studied. This is the ultimate worst-case scenario because holy magic is the hard counter to a lick. This paladin does not even let him finish his thought before swinging a blinding arc of light. And when Hans tries to negotiate, the knight just cold-bloodedly says, "I did not give you permission to speak." He's not falling for any talk, warning Hans to keep his silver tongue behind his teeth. Our boy realizes this guy is a total fanatic, so he'll have to fight his way out of this mess. He lets out a dark mana blast to create some distance, hoping to find a gap to escape. But the paladin just shrugs off the attack like it's a light breeze, closing the distance in a heartbeat with a burst of speed that defies physics. This holy sword sinks deep into Hans's ribs, burning his undead soul with pure divine agony. Hans gasps, "You are punishing me for killing the wicked." But the knight just tells him to shut his mouth. This paladin roars that Hans is no better than the criminals he slaughtered, calling his twisted sense of justice a complete delusion as he presses the attack. Hans tries to retaliate, but his mana feels sluggish and unresponsive, and before he can adapt, a holy-infused fist shatters his concentration and his mask. A massive shockwave sends our boy flying back into the dirt, leaving him coughing and vulnerable as the paladin commands his squad to prepare the hymns. Suddenly, a choir of priests begins chanting a divine melody that vibrates through the air. And Hans realizes this is not just music, it's a specialized frequency designed to tear his soul apart. He clenches his skeletal fist, knowing he could end this by killing the priests, but his own code will not let him harm the innocent. That hesitation is a fatal mistake as the paladin's shadow looms over him once more, driving a holy blade through his ribs and pinning him to the ground in a burst of light. "Now, bind him." The knight barks, signaling the final phase of their trap. Hans realizes he is in deep trouble as his vision starts to blur from the divine pressure, while the priests weave their mana into glowing, unbreakable restraints. A golden spearhead thwacks into his frame, anchoring him to the spot, and in seconds he is completely wrapped in holy chains that sizzle against his bones. Suspended in midair and totally helpless, he finally admits he severely underestimated these humans. These chains act like a spiritual muzzle, cutting off his ability to cast even the simplest spells. Looking at the praying choir, he realizes they've spent weeks perfecting this ambush just for him. Hans can only chuckle at the irony, admitting, "You really went all out just to catch one guy." This paladin sneers, "Are you ready to surrender now?" But our boy just gives him a look like he has already won, cold-bloodedly replying that he has absolutely no intention of talking. "This is where we part ways," he shouts, taunting the order's pawns as the paladin lunges forward with a blade of holy lightning, roaring that Hans is not going anywhere today. Hans just laughs, claiming no binds can ever hold him, before activating his ultimate escape card, Dismiss Hands. Sir Tuscan stands there stunned, staring at the empty chains and wondering just what kind of monster he was actually dealing with. Back in the real world, our guy wakes up drenched in sweat, wondering if he's finally stirred up a bit too much trouble between the vow of the abyss and the undead legions. This bloodthirsty vampire clan Brockaslack hunting for his head, and now the order of the divine breathing down his neck. He realizes something absolutely insane is happening with his stats. Opening the karma shop, he finally connects the dots on why. His points have been skyrocketing lately. It's all because he's become the most wanted man in the entire realm. But hey, he'll worry about that later. He's got work to do. Hans crouches in a dark alley, whispering, "It's time to see the fruits of my research," as he explains that his dark magic spreads like a virus through simple physical contact. Within seconds, a whole army of stray cats looks up with glowing, lethal red eyes, giving him a live feed map and putting all of Seoul under his watch. Suddenly, Hans flinches as a sharp ping hits his brain. Realizing one of his new feline spies has already found something dark, and he mutters, "It's already here, the first signal." Miles away in a hidden basement, a terrified woman screams, "Please do not kill me." She's trembling on the floor, begging for her life as a shadow looms over her. But when she spots a passerby through the bars of her prison, she desperately shrieks, "Help me, I have been kidnapped." This man outside does not even flinch, walking away as if he heard absolutely nothing. Her captor snatches her back by the hair, laughing that her little stunt will not work, and he presses a cold blade to her throat, sneering, "Scream all you like." This psycho claims that thanks to his power, her suffering is for his ears and eyes alone. He forces her toward a microphone, demanding she scream louder for his twisted recording, before raising his knife to finish the job and add her to his collection. Just as he swings, the entire wall shatters into a million pieces. And the killer freezes as a shadowy presence steps out of the dust, muttering, "Your ability must be concealment and sound suppression." Hans finishes, looking absolutely cold-blooded. Hans stares him down, cold-bloodedly stating that his despicable acts end right here. This killer panics, tightening his grip on the hostage while screaming, "Who are you, a guardian?" He tries to play his final card, threatening to end the girl's life, but Hans just scoffs. "Really?" In a literal blink, our boy snatches the girl away, leaving the psycho stuttering. A returner. Even while shaking like a leaf, this creep has the nerve to bark that Hans is stealing his prey. He lunges forward in a desperate rush, swinging that blade like it'll actually make a difference. But Hans just catches the strike with a swirl of dark mana that freezes the killer in his tracks. Seems like this is not your first time, Hans mutters, his energy squeezing the life out of the room. He reaches out and taps the killer's forehead, deciding it is time to see exactly what else he has done. Activating a dark spell called Echoes of the Dead, he forces the killer's mind to cough up every secret. These visions of innocent victims begging for mercy are enough to make Hans realize this guy is a total monster. Your punishment will be execution, he declares, driving his mana-infused hand straight into the killer's skull. This basement fills with a blood-curdling scream as the dark magic begins to tear his soul apart. But Hans is not done yet, coldly whispering that a simple death would be way too merciful for him. Since he needs some undead muscle on Earth anyway, he decides to turn this trash into something useful. He begins a gruesome ritual to drain every drop of blood, molding the remains into a loyal servant. Within seconds, the serial killer is reborn as a medium undead ghast, a mindless beast bound to his will. Hans commands his new pet to hide in the shadows, knowing this monster will finally be put to good use. Looking at the unconscious woman, he decides to leave the mess for the authorities to find. And moments later, the police swarm the building, completely unaware that a lick just did their job for them. Meet Hanchial Park, cynical team leader of the Awakeners Bureau. Currently reviewing footage of the serial killer Hans just deleted, his team confirms a fiend did it, leaving behind dark magic. And while Hanchial admits the guy deserved it, he hates vigilantes. He rants that whoever did this is just drunk on power, staring at the execution complete message Hans left as a calling card. Justice, my asterisk, he mutters, unaware Hans is watching him from a rooftop while Hanchial asks, who does he think he is? As Hans holds his feline spy and wants a face-to-face meeting,